Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. We're going to start this evening with a couple of public hearings. The very first one is a possible change in our code having to do with PIP fees. Bob, do you want to explain this?
Yeah, it's actually not a change in the code. Our town code permits the town board to establish the PIP fees from time to time by resolution. So this would be a resolution to amend the PIP fees, basically to provide for full-time inspection. It's not amending all of the entire portion of the PIP fee structure. It's only amending that portion of it that has to do with inspections. And I think probably we ought to ask Dave Britton, who with CRA, who will be doing the inspections, who actually gave us the suggestions for the proposal, to make to give us a little explanation and tell us how it works in other jurisdictions, because this is a bit of a change for Wheatfield.
Dave, can you grab a mic?
Sure. Again, my name's Dave Britton. I'm with CRA. The proposed amendments to the town code here, or to the code, very similar to what has been adopted in a couple other communities in Niagara County, one being the town of Pendleton and the other being the town of Lewiston. In general, the deposit amount for inspection is based on the schedule, an actual construction schedule, and that's the number of days. It's not a calendar schedule, but the actual number of days. Well, how we've worked it, or how it's been worked in the past for these other communities, is in addition to submitting the application with the PIPs, or the PIP application, you would also have the schedule submitted at that time. In return, with that schedule, we would then prepare a letter to the town board that essentially says, based on your schedule, number of days of construction, your resident inspection time would be X amount of hours, your contract or construction administration would be X amount of hours, to cover all incurred costs associated with your project. The benefit, or I should say for the town, it's critical. It's important to me to have, or for these other communities, and it's worked out well, is to have it based on a construction schedule. Full-time inspection based on a construction dollar basis can tend to drag on forever. A schedule tends to accelerate things, keep things in check, have projects that are better managed for time-wise, and therefore, in return, typically you have less impact on the neighboring residents, your current residents. So that's kind of the steps that's used in the communities that we're involved with, and how this code has been generally drafted as.
Okay. And how do you derive at the actual dollars when you're working together with a developer? How do you know how much money goes into the trust and agency fund?
Yeah, the town board would set the rates that would be used for inspection, and the rates for that engineering, the engineers or inspecting engineers. So can you give us the rates? Yes. So the rates are established, and then based on the number of days, it would be, as it's stated in here, it's 8 hours per day multiplied by the number of days multiplied by the rate.
The rates are different depending on what type of person and qualifications, and whether you've got a surveyor there, or a senior engineer, or a not so senior engineer. Yeah. You've got your table of rates. There must have been 20 or 30 different rates.
Yeah, the inspection rate would be established. It's a set rate. So
regardless, that'd be the same for anybody, whether
they're correct.
Okay.
Yes, correct. Whether it's from our firm, we only put out qualified engineers or inspectors. So.
And what is the hourly rate for an inspecting engineer at this point in time?
Yeah, I don't recall what was in.
My recollection was it was $95 an hour. Does that sound about correct?
That sounds correct, yes.
What happens, Dave, when you have 1 or 2 or 3 days in a row of rain and nobody works?
There's no charges associated with that. There's no inspection. It's based on the number of days, so of actual construction work. So, yeah.
Anybody on the board have any questions for Dave on this issue?
Yes. On page 1, the bottom there says developers responsible for depositing with the town any additional funds. So what happens if you run out of money in the PIP kitty, or whatever, if you want to call it that?
Sure.
And because you're drilling down, the developer is going to give the town a check for X number of dollars based on the size of the project and the scope of the project. So say we have $10,000 in a kitty. You guys, full-time inspection, are drilling down on that. And then maybe because of poor scheduling or whatever, you run out of money. So you tell the developer they have to put another $2,000 in the kitty. What happens if the developer goes out there and starts doing some site prep or doing something that maybe needs inspection, and you guys or the engineers are not out there? Are there any penalties, or how do you control that? How have you controlled it in the past?
Sure. With the deposit, it's a deposit. So if the schedule is, I guess, beat, or the project comes in prior to the, in less than the allocated schedule, deposit is returned. The remaining funds are returned back to the developer.
And the same thing we were doing with our past PIPs.
And then, it's very easy to see when your schedule is going to be exceeded. You can look at what's the balance of the work that's left to do versus what your dollars and number of hours that are left. At that point, there's what we do typically is we have a letter that we issue to the board. We issue it also to the developer. Says, your schedule appears to be going to be exceeded. Usually there's a dialogue back and forth. What is your anticipated completion date? Or not completion date, but number of days necessary to complete your project. They come back. They might say, I need another 2 weeks. Well, based on another 2 weeks, that deposit is X amount of dollars. So, the tough part is that the town is not in control of the developer's contractor. They don't manage their time, their schedule, and that puts the town at a disadvantage. So, anything to encourage efficiency, encourage proper, good management of the project is in the best interest of the town.
But the town's not determining how much money. It's your engineering firm that's going to tell the developers how much they have to put into the account, right?
Again, it's based on schedule. So if the developer says,
and what I'm saying is, us, the town board, our building department's not, or sewer, water department, if they're putting in sewer line, it's not, our town departments aren't affixing a price and a schedule and a fee. It's your engineering firm that's doing that.
It's actually the developer who is setting their schedule.
Okay.
So what would happen would be that the developer would say, I'm going to be doing a project for, say, 40 hours, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 40 hours, so then the rate would be applied. So it's really the developer who is setting the amount of the PIP fee that they'd pay. And if they can speed up their construction, then they pay less.
Now, what happens during the summer? You get, it stays light to 9 o'clock. So these guys start at 7 in the morning and say they want to work to 6 o'clock, but they want to work a 10-hour day.
Right.
How do you bill?
Again, it's strictly hours.
So it's strictly hours. So if they work a 10-hour day, you're not booking them at time and a half for the.
No. Matter of fact, it's actually more efficient for them to work longer hours. But again, you need to establish some sort of basis for the deposit, and so the 8 hours is the basis. However, not restricted. Obviously you're limited by what your town allows for construction hours. But we've seen where they work from from 9 in the morning till, 6, 7 at night. But the hourly rate, again, is still fixed.
I got a question for Bob O'Toole then. With prevailing wages, I know when you bid contracts and stuff with government, there's wages that are prevailing that you have to meet.
No.
Don't you have to also do anything with 40 hours if you work more than that for overtime?
No, this is, no,
Different?
this is different. This is not a,
This is all straight time if they work
yes.
70-hour work week, they're getting paid $95 an hour times 70?
They're not being paid by the town.
You're paying out of the PIP program?
Well, you're paying the engineering firm for a service, and the individual inspector is being paid by the engineering firm.
That's something they can address.
Okay. I had one other question on page
Good.
1. We, in the middle there, no work will be permitted without a town inspector on site, but then down below, we call the inspector in a lot of places the town engineer. I don't know whether you want to, just for clarity, you list town board, town clerk, town engineer through most of it, and you got one paragraph that has town inspector. Is there a difference between town engineer and town inspector?
No, so we should use town engineer.
Where is that, Larry?
Second page, second full paragraph, third line from the third word from the end of the paragraph.
The applicant shall be responsible for the actual cost of the project. You see that paragraph? Right below that highlighted, go down 2 paragraphs.
Yep. Okay. Anything else, Larry? Any other board member, any questions for Dave? Or anything on the subject? If not, we'll open it up to the floor. Is there anybody on the floor who wishes to speak on the issue of PIP fees alone? Is there anybody that has a view?
I had some discussions earlier with Wendell, and there'll have to be some additional tweaking, but we can do the tweaking at the next meeting.
Okay, if there's nothing further on the question, then I will go ahead and I will close this public hearing on the issue of PIP fees. We do have a couple of minutes before we'll start the next public hearing.